Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining me for another review, everybody. And man, are we in for talking about something interesting today. I can't wait to break down this bourbon with you because as it stands, this is my highest rated bourbon of the year so far. So we'll break down how we got to this moment and also maybe what it means for some other pours that are coming this year. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So, got a bit of the special pour poured into this glass right here. And check out this sexy glass. Let's see if I can get that to zoom in. Yeah, backyard Big Vic's BS, man, right there. What a cool looking Glen. I love the deep edge on these. So, getting into today's bottle, get some. Oh, I'm so excited. This is a Four Gate Private Select 10-year. This is coming out of Indiana, and there is a particular thing with this one. It is selected by the CBOs of Four Gate. So this is a private cast selected specifically from the CBOs. I'll get into what that means in just a moment. And I believe there are a few different casts that are labeled as CBO picks, if I'm understanding the story right. So this one is specifically cast number 853, and it's 109.3 proof. Also, this ran $209 retail in Northern Kentucky. So keep that in mind as I go through this. So this is a private cask single barrel coming from Four Gate. I have had a few of these so far. Typically, when they are 10 years, they are Indiana bourbon. If you see them there for 7 years, that's a Kentucky bourbon. This one is an Indiana bourbon. And when it comes to the Four Gate single barrel casks, they are then typically finished in a toasted cask as well. So this one was finished, just to be clear, straight bourbon whiskey finished in a new toasted cask by Kelvin Cooperage. So this is a Kelvin barrel when it comes to that second cask as well. So getting into this one, this came into my hands from a tip from Top Shelf Dustin. And Top Shelf Dustin, when he tells you to go get a bourbon, you gotta like take a step back and be like, Dustin's recommending a bourbon right now. I should really hop to it and get to the store. And even stranger, when Dustin recommends you get a toasted bourbon, that is a very, very strange recommendation coming out of Dustin. So when I got this text message on a Saturday, I just kind of said, sayonara, wife, and then just took off to the local party source down here and grabbed myself a bottle of this. It was limit one, otherwise I might have gotten more. If I would have known it was as good as it is before that moment too, maybe I would have put like a fake mustache on top of my other mustache and, snuck in with a raincoat, found some way to get another one. But let's get into this. We're going to break down the nose, break down the palate, get into the flavors, and then we'll get into the final scores, which, spoiler warning, I've already said, is my highest scoring bourbon of the year thus far. Well, cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining me thus far. Let's get into this pour. Oh, man, that's such an interesting note. Man, the nose on this thing is so decadent and so vibrant. The one thing that I do get from this that I find very interesting, because I don't know if I've ever called out this note on any other bourbons before, but there's essentially like this undertone of pistachio ice cream that I just can't escape. And it's like covered in powdered sugar too. Oh man, I love myself some pistachio ice cream. Then right next to that, there is like this creme brulee going on with that burnt caramel and the custard. The other thing that sticks out to me on this one is the depth of the fruits. And the fruits don't go the direction I actually thought they would. They kind of sway more towards orange and peaches than sometimes a typical cherry that I'll get on MGP. That's of this era. The only other thing that kind of sticks out to me, I mean, I already mentioned the burnt top of the creme brulee, but there is kind of this caramel reduction sauce. And the other thing that I would attribute, probably due to the toasted cask in itself, I get very much a baked Alaska smell to it. So not quite the toasted marshmallow, but more of that toasted meringue that you'd get on top of a baked Alaska. And then on top of that too, I mean, this is a toasted cask, but the 10 years from the original cask does shine through too. So you kind of get both aspects of it, which I do find to be interesting. Sometimes I find when they toast these older casks, such as like a 10-year single barrel, it almost like de-ages it in some way. Like the toasted cask actually takes away and makes it smell more youthful because you're getting more of that new wood than the old wood that it was in before. Not in this one. This one's very balanced and you get the best of both worlds. All right. I'm going to stop yapping. Let's get in for a taste of this thing. Mm, mm. So good. So good all the way through the finish there, too. Gosh, I love this thing. So, up front, I mean, the mouthfeel is near perfect. Not only is it getting probably the oils from that original 10-year cask, but that second cask is also adding just this fluffy but oily mouthfeel, runs all over the sides of my tongue. I mean, it just takes over everything. If I could show in the glass here just how oily this thing is, too. I mean, it is just monumentally oily. The flavors front of the palate immediately remind me essentially of a melting pot. So when you go to the melting pot and they give you marshmallows and then you got the chocolate fondue that you can dip into, that's what I get initially up front. Let's get into mid palate. Oh man, so good mid palate. So this takes me back to a baked Alaska. If you haven't had a baked Alaska before, go look it up. I'll try to describe it a little bit, but maybe you got to see it to understand what I'm talking about. But essentially, there's a layer of chocolate cake at the base of this thing, covered in a layer of chocolate mousse, then covered in the meringue that's been toasted. And that's the type of dessert that I'm talking about and getting like all those flavors mid palate. I mean, it is decadent. And then around the baked Alaska itself, there are going to be a medley of fruits. Oh, I'm going to be talking about apples and cherries, and then those peaches again. So that orange that I highlighted off the nose doesn't really translate. The peaches take a step back. It does flow into the cherries that I would expect with a bit of that apple, probably from the newer cast too. Oh man, the nose keeps getting better and better every time I go into it. Let's get into the finish. Mm. Then the finish is a continuation of all those notes. The chocolate really does shine through in particular. But what I really like about it is the sweetness begins to get balanced with some rye spice. I mean, this is an Indiana bourbon. It's probably, I would guess, the 21% rye, but the rye spice starts to shine through. There's a pepper, there's a spiciness there, and then there's a lemon zest that starts coming through with that high rye as well. But still, it's the chocolate. There's chocolate upon chocolate. Still tasting chocolate right now. And man, it is a delicious box of chocolates. Oh, oh, so good. So good. All right, let's get into the scores here, everybody. So, here on the channel, we do have a three-tier scoring system, a whole bunch of metrics behind the scenes on this, but ultimately it gets summarized into flavor, experience, and value. Flavor is just how delicious it was every step of the way, from the nose, the front of the palate, mid palate, to the finish. which I'm still tasting now, and it is literally delicious. The experience is more of a technical score about the mouthfeel, about the complexity of the flavors, the depth of the flavors, the length of the finish. And then value, always a controversial one when I give high marks to something like this on value. But I did give it a 9 out of 10 on value, even though it is $209. I have no problems paying up for something that can deliver at this high end, even if it's $209. I mean, this is the type of bottle that I would love to have a backup of, and I would store it in my closet for years to come and open it at a bottle share if I did have backups of this particular bottle, just to show it to other whiskey enthusiasts in the future. So recommend on this particular one, if you see the CBO picked by the CBOs, and this is particularly cask 853, man, big recommend for me. The only thing that would hold me back from recommending this to some people is just simply the price, because I know that expensive of a whiskey is not something that some people will dive into just because the price is way, way up there. So those would be the only people that I would try to keep this recommendation away from. But everybody else, like if you were going to splurge on just one whiskey so far this year, I mean, this is my top whiskey of the year so far. This is one I would splurge on. Do I plan to buy another? I don't know if I'll get the opportunity to buy another, but I will be keeping an eye out for the CBO pick from Four Gate. Now, I didn't entirely get into it, but the CBO, what that means, just to be clear, is that it was picked by the owners of Four Gate. They gave themselves the title of CBOs, Chief Barrel Officer and Chief Blending Officer. And I've got their card somewhere around here. Oh, I thought I had it right on the windowsill right here, right on the mirror, but it's not there. But yes, they are the CBOs. So this was picked by the owners of Four Gate. And just a couple weeks ago, we did have Bill Straub on the channel, and I got to bring this cask up a little bit. And man, he was just glowing about these. But these are special releases. So if you see single barrels from the CBO of Four Gate, man, just know that they probably had the pick of the litter, and that's what they stamped their own titles on. It's pretty impressive. So let me know what you think in the comments. I will say, going into this, and even more recently, I set up a blind to have this experimentation going on. I have been very skeptical about toasted bourbons, and if toasted bourbons are actually improving impressive casks or if they're diminishing from them. You know, I've had a few experience sometimes where I've had the chance to try the toasted version and the non-toasted version of something, and I've always walked away liking the non-toasted version better. So that's what surprises me the most about this being my number one ranking of the year so far. The fact that it is a toasted bourbon and is most likely the best toasted bourbon that I've ever had through any year, not just 2023, but any year in general. That's how impressive of a cask I find this particular pour. Well, thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Keep an eye out for this one. If you have tried this one before, let me know what you think in the comments. Oh my gosh, I'd love to have some more perspective on this one just to see if you feel the same way I do and that you are head over heels in the same way I am. Thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. We'll catch you on the next whiskey review. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you